Hello, everyone. My name is Kellen Lynch, and I am the Networkweaver for Housing Solutions Network in Jefferson County, Washington. Today, I will be sharing how our network of housing champions is creating a wave of action for housing in our community. Before we get started on what Housing Solutions Network does, it'll be helpful to explain where we are and what kind of situation we're currently navigating. Jefferson County, Washington is in the top northwest corner of the Pacific Northwest. You see it here in red, and we're just 2 hours north from Seattle. This land is the current and ancestral home to many indigenous peoples, including the S'Klallam, Makah, Quileute, Elwha, Ho, and Quinault. We are a rural county of 30,000 with an economy heavily based in maritime trades, organic agriculture, and tourism, and we enjoy a close proximity to both natural beauty and a large city. Also key to our identity is the average age of our county. We are the 7th eldest county in the United States, with an average age of 58. Unfortunately, the combination of a low-wage local economy with a high demand for the vibrant local culture has made Jefferson County the third most unaffordable county in Washington and has created our present housing crisis. Over the past year of the pandemic, we have witnessed these trends being dramatically exacerbated by more people leaving cities to come here. Even before the pandemic, our rental vacancy rate was hovering between 0 and 1%, compared to the national average of 7%. Half of our community members are living in housing that is unaffordable for their income level. 25%, or a quarter, of our county's housing stock sits seasonally empty. That's upwards of 4,000 houses. What we are experiencing is both a general lack of available housing and specifically a lack of housing that is affordable for our county's workers, our teachers, our public servants, nonprofit professionals, maritime tradespeople, farmers, nurses, grocery clerks, and service industry workers. This is impacting our local economies as businesses, government, and nonprofits alike all struggle to hire or retain workers and are consistently pointing to the lack of available and financially attainable housing. Jefferson County is experiencing a lack of missing middle style homes. These missing middle homes are smaller, more naturally affordable homes that also include cottages, accessory dwelling units, and mobile home parks that are great options for those not able to buy or rent a house. These homes serve not the lowest income nor the highest, but the middle income, around 60% area median income to just over 100% area median income. And this is not unique to our county. And cities like Portland and Seattle are having regular debate around allowing for more variety and space for these important accessible homes. Custom-built homes, like the ones most often built in our county, may never be affordable to someone at even the median family income. This issue of housing accessibility and affordability has compounded over the years as demand has increased and subsequently priced many out of our regional market. And these trends are being witnessed all across the country as income and wealth inequality continue to rise and those silver bullet solutions continue to evade us. Fortunately, very fortunately, our community has both a handful of active nonprofit affordable housing providers and a wealth of motivated community members who are forming a critical mass of action for housing solutions. Their presence and dedication is not lost on us, and our aim as Housing Solutions Network is to provide informational support and advocacy for each of their missions. Housing Solutions Network, or HSN, was incubated by our local community foundation, Jefferson Community Foundation. They connect people, ideas, and resources to work together on building a future of opportunity for all who live in our community. Because affordable workforce housing is our largest local challenge, Jefferson Community Foundation launched Housing Solutions Network as an initiative 3 years ago. Using a community network building approach, HSN started by convening and listening to existing affordable workforce housing providers and builders. We asked them to identify the greatest obstacles and opportunities they faced in scaling their solutions to meet this rapidly growing need. And this is a core component of community network building, to ask the community what it needs rather than just assuming the answer. The most commonly identified obstacle was the lack of community understanding, support, and involvement in the issue. So HSN started to educate the community and engage a growing network of new housing champions who could offer new leadership, new thinking, and new resources to the table. HSN also reached out to community groups not directly involved in housing, groups like the local Chamber of Commerce and Rotary, to ask them, what skills, resources, and action do you already have that can be brought to bear on this issue of housing that affects all of us? What part of your capacity and mission will you dedicate to solving this problem? So you'll see here the concentric circles of kind of how HSN was incubated and came to be. So beyond talking with nonprofit housing providers, a gathering of local builders and developers was organized to ask a similar question of what the challenges and opportunities are for building affordable housing, for workforce housing. This was a key in developing a list of issues for the next round of community involvement. So from that round, that gathering of builders, a larger circle was brought in that was composed of housing advocates, officials, real estate agents, renters, business owners, and also those housing providers and builders. They were tasked with reviewing the challenges and opportunities put forth by those previous gatherings of builders and housing providers, and asked to break into groups and address one of the issues with a plan of action for the next 90 days. 90 days. This kind of encouragement and feet to the fire approach was modeled after the lean thinking work philosophy, which is committed to reducing obstacles, building a culture of continuous improvement, and working to understand what the community values. And that lean thinking approach has been with us ever since and continues to inform how we go about the work that we do at HSN. It's really been integral to our growth. So this activity spurred the creation of HSN's first group of housing action teams. Some of these original groups that met on that day of all these people coming together, they're still meeting. Some have morphed or some have faded and new ones have grown up. One group that completed the 90-day challenge produced a professional video explaining, really setting the scene for the housing situation as it currently stands in Jefferson County, and showcase creative solutions from some individuals that are creating more housing. This video has been viewed over 1,000 times online, and that group that came together has hosted many in-person screenings of the video that had facilitated conversations, and we've had about 400 community members involved in that, of course, until the pandemic hit. So HSN now boasts 4 housing action teams, or HATs, which are working on community-led projects related to some form of housing, or rather some housing obstacle or opportunity. These hats are powered by over 30 active volunteers from around our county and supported by 2 paid staff, myself and our director, Justine Gonzalez-Berg. Our mission is to create a network of housing champions. We see HSN as being so much more than what just 2 paid staff could do. And that, I think, is one of the more important things to take away from here, is just the wealth of information and ability that exists in community, even from people that are not trained in housing. So we are really relying on that collaborative support from our entire volunteer base that the 2 of us, the 2 paid staff, help facilitate movement on. And in preparing for this presentation, I made sure to speak with them because I alone do not represent HSN. Everyone represents HSN in their own way. And I asked them about what they see or how they see HSN's role in our region. So, in the words of our volunteers, they see HSN as a catalyst to mobilize action for workforce housing, as a central responsive resource to collect information, a responsive resource, something that responds to the changing situation. And they see it as a way to explore many possibilities to make it easier to build, rent, and home share. So, Housing Solutions Network has been guided by the network approach to organizing and problem solving. And having that network approach allows people to feel valued in ways that they can contribute. This is a direct quote from one of our members. They feel valued and able to contribute. And HSN supports an autonomy of action, which allows a wide range of activists and concerned community members to work together respectfully. I think that is so key. So this network building approach is not new. It's ancient, of course. We've all relied on network and community to build society and solve issues, confront problems. But what is unique here, not within HSN, but within community network building, is how it's formalized, how these networks that exist are really recognized for what they are and are utilized to deal with a complex issue. So what is a network and how we're talking about it? So networks are based upon relationship building and communication through those natural connections. As our human world has increased in complexity, organizations have formed to offer a regimented top-down approach to our ever-growing challenges. Networks are not the antithesis of organizations, but they exist next to and all around them. And formalizing these networks of shared interest and motivation while keeping the task and assembly group non-hierarchical and externally focused is key to our work in HSN, that we are externally focused and internally motivated. We're doing it because we want to do it. We are very values oriented, but we're looking outside of ourselves and outside of our non-organization to see what is going on. How can we be of service? And that drives us to experiment. It drives us to try new things because people are constantly coming forward with their own ideas that we workshop and try out. So obviously, relationship building and trust building is key here. And as you see, the Networkweaver Handbook has been a great resource for our own development as a network and as my development as a network weaver. So why would you choose a network? Well, it's often seen as a helpful solution when you're dealing with a problem that is especially complex, as is housing, something that touches absolutely everyone. You need new ideas, you're at an impasse, and you need that new perspective. Solutions are not clear, or maybe rather, there's many potential solutions. And you just need to engage diverse people. People are coming at this from all different angles. So being able to take that in and actually reflect it out is critical. So a network champions many solutions which are driven by community members. And this network offers a formalized structure so that the community members can build that capacity to have substantial action. It really enables people to get involved, which I think is probably one of the most beautiful things about HSN, is how it empowers people to, stop complaining, stop, wallowing in the grief of it all. And it is sad, and we need to actually do something. And we believe that we are. So HSN operates as both a convener of people, but also a convener of information on housing. One of my main tasks as Networkweaver is to catalog and showcase current information on housing affordability and availability, and also highlight stories from our community. We're very solution oriented with our stories. We have dozens of HSM-produced stories of impact from our community that detail personal struggles and triumphs. And this is part of that foundational work that HSM provides as a network, so that the work of our active volunteers within our 4 housing action teams has somewhere to orient around. Our primary directives are to support our network of housing action teams, connect people with similar interests, and keep a strong communications focus to educate community members and stay abreast of the larger housing field and work to support housing organizations. So we're bringing together information, we're communicating, we're tracking issues, and we're building trust. That is what, especially the staff do outside of the housing action teams, just to lay that foundation that the volunteers can orient around and draw from, so that there is some structure. Our housing action teams were created by members of the network, and they reflect their interests. They each address a specific obstacle to housing. And our 4 teams that are currently active are Housing Connections, Permits, Outreach, and Tiny Home Communities. Housing Connections looks at unlocking the existing building stock to be better utilized. They're working to inspire more home sharing, to encourage the owners of empty houses to create new rentals and utilize those empty spaces, and to enable the creation of new ADUs in backyards. This team has also provided information on how to become a landlord, which has served to empower people with rentable spaces to put them on the market, and has informed existing landlords how to best relate to their tenant. Our permit hat has identified key permitting issues within the city and county's permitting departments via a county-wide survey. This type of feedback is not always the most welcome for these departments, but goes a long way towards bringing light to those issues. We found we could step in as a network, as a sort of listener and intermediary, to build back trust and encourage stronger customer service, which turned out to be one of the key issues that came up in our survey. Therefore, permitting has emerged as a key obstacle for our local network to overcome in partnership with these agencies. One of the solutions we are workshopping internally and with the city and county is something we call the Permit Navigator. And in its basic form, it is just a guided video series that leads folks through finding the permits they need to build housing and submitting them without so much of a headache. We have local builders in our network who are assisting with that guidance, volunteering again. As we grow this video series, we'd like to see it transition outside of just being an online resource. We see it as developing into a cohort style class, similar to the ones that our local small business association hosts for business plan writing, where people come together with their own business plans, and in this case, their own permits for houses or ADUs, and work on them together with a shared subject matter expert. The whole idea here is to ease the burden on the city and county to answer all of these questions from all these different people that have likely never filed a permit before. That is a big task for any department to take on. And we want to see more housing built. And so we are hoping to ease that burden on the city and county, which are understaffed, and allow housing to flow a little bit easier. And especially housing to flow that is actually accessible and affordable for folks. So we are focusing on the ADUs as a key piece of that Permit Navigator project. Additionally, we have the Outreach hat, which is very focused on galvanizing our community through awareness building and storytelling. They are the team that built or that produced that video after that 90-day challenge. They're expanding right now their outreach to local real estate offices and congregations who are both involved in their own respective sides of housing and can make great allies in this work. And by linking these parties and others to our network, we can spread our stories and get our information out even further and just involve people that are already involved in housing. The tiny home community has been very active in housing policy conversations with the city, and the team produced a policy paper about options for increasing affordable density in the effort to incentivize the building of smaller, more naturally affordable units rather than larger single-family homes. Their work on tiny homes has also led to a robust resource page on our website and a webinar series. These webinars detail tiny home community development strategies, financing of tiny homes and tiny home communities, and just the overall journey of what it is to be living in a space like that and in a community like that. Currently, this tiny home group is working to address gaps in our ordinances around the different needs and the definitions between tent encampments versus tiny shelter villages. And I'll explain why this is very important in a moment. That conversation has arisen because of a shelter village project that was incubated in the tiny homes hat. Now, it's possible you have already seen a presentation from Solution Summit about this specific village, Peter's Place. We were fortunate enough to speak with Bill Barberg a few months ago, and some of our lead volunteers from that, Judy Alexander and Peter Bonnian, gave a wonderful presentation on Peter's Place. And so you can view that on the previous Solutions Summit. But I'll just recap here very briefly. So in the fall of 2020, a few members of that tiny homes hat had grown inspired to consider becoming more hands-on and stepping out of the meetings to really think about what could they do now to address housing, especially housing for unsheltered people. Now, this was a slight departure from HSN's overall mission, but it did reflect the network's desires, right? We are more focused on workforce housing as a whole, but we recognize that there is still a need for transitional housing, even though there's organizations already working on it, and a volunteer, very proactive approach could have been useful. And so that's what they went with. So they wondered, would it be possible to build 5 individual small shelters for our local unsheltered population? And this emerged out of HSN, but quickly spread through our community, as it will with networks. I first heard about it because I'm part of a community garden here in Jefferson County. And an email was sent out to all the garden members asking if there were enough people within our garden that would like to band together and build one of these shelters. And it didn't take more than a few days to have a team signed up, ready to go. And this, I must say, was before any permits were pulled and before anyone knew where the shelters were going. But this cart before the horse strategy worked as it was designed to. It pressured the city and county to work with us immediately instead of proposing a project and waiting months or years to get underway. Now, clearly the strategy can really only be used once, especially if you want to stay in good standing with your city and county. And already as we work on our second village, a different tack is being taken with those departments. But in the end, 12 shelters were built in 5 months and were then subsequently filled by unsheltered seniors that may have been living in tents previously in our county. A local housing and social service provider, Bayside Housing, stepped in to manage the DaytoDay site and do the case management after. So HSN has no active role in this, but they did spawn it and kind of let it go and do its own thing without retaining any sort of control or expectation of control around it. And I think that is such a good example of how the network model works versus an organizational model, which might be more concerned about what kind of liability they would be attached to with this project that was really very organic and volunteer driven. We spawned it, we let it go, and it thankfully was led by very talented, very dedicated people that saw it through. And that, you cannot bypass and treat lightly. You do need people that are dedicated to see something through and to really inspire the community to come together. So it's not only the volunteers that came together, but local companies, sponsored and discounted the lumber. people came through to just, encourage us and cheer us on. People donated money, churches donated space, two churches donated space. The county donated time, the city donated time. And going back to what I was mentioning a few minutes ago, that tiny homes hat is working on updating our ordinances that deal with tent encampments so that there's space for them to deal with shelter encampments, which obviously require a lot more infrastructure if you're going to have any sort of facilities on site. And so the current rules only allow these encampments to exist for half a year, which is currently not practical when you build these things that are going to last years and years. So they are working to update those ordinances, which is another beautiful thing that HSN members have recognized this is an issue without anyone directing them to do that. They have recognized it and they are responding to it. It's a very organic process, and I think it's a very elegant process too. And so it must also be said that, they did this organically and they were supported by HSN along the way and the Jefferson Community Foundation, which were able to direct a very large donation towards the project that covered all of the infrastructure costs and needs for that village. So once again, always that feedback loop and that network and relationship building. It's critical to the success of these projects. So how do we go about this work, right? What is the day-to-day like? We have regular facilitated meetings. Each hat meets twice a month. We have a support council that exists almost as a board of directors, but is not directive. It simply allows some checks to happen for our staff, myself and the director, to kind of get feedback on the institutional side, or the kind of the backbone side of the network. It's not an institution. And then we also have the Network Hub, which is a newly formed piece of the Housing Solutions Network, and it's more of a representative body that each hat has ability to come to and bring in information of what they're doing and also opportunities for collaboration. So always emphasizing that feedback. And then lastly, as everyone knows, during the pandemic, we're relying heavily on Zoom and also heavily on things like Google Drive, which I'm using right now to give this presentation. And I just say that even though it's obvious, because we're relying on volunteers that are generally retired and don't have a intuitive experience with these tools, but we're building up that knowledge base within our network. And so we have led multiple tutorials for these programs so that they are more helpful to everyone in the network and enable us to work better towards housing solutions. So there's many lessons learned here. Top of mind is that people have a lot to offer. These are solvable problems. They need time, understanding, and the right approach. These are direct quotes from our HSN members. I like this one in particular. Having two younger paid staff as the glue that holds the volunteerism together literally bridges the age diversity of our community, which is true. The staff are the youngest people in HSN, and the volunteers are on the elder end. And it is a beautiful bridge that has come to be. But one of the other major lessons learned that we are still learning ourselves is to do that concerted outreach to people that are being impacted the greatest by the housing crisis. These are the younger people, the people of lower income, the people that don't have the relationships built up here to fall back on. It is easier, we have found, to do that work, that outreach work to those communities earlier on rather than later on where we are now. Of course, it's not too late for us to do it. We are doing it, but we encourage networks and any project to really act on that early, to consider who's most impacted and bring them along throughout the process, rather than when you already have so much momentum and you're far down the line and it looks especially challenging to bring new people on. to address potentially new topics, which we are trying to do. It's just, it can be more clunky that way when you do it retroactively. And tension as well exists between the fact that we work on workforce housing and the fact that we also have a high demand and a high need for transitional housing. We are constantly working with that, but we do tend to lean more towards the workforce housing, given that there are other transitional housing organizations that are doing great work. But as you saw with Peter's Place, the tiny shelter village, that was directly for transitional housing for unsheltered seniors. Another lesson learned is that just creating this formalized space can enable people to find something action-oriented to do, and much more than just what two staff could do alone. People want to help, and they just need the right invitation and context. Most community members have not been involved in housing issues before this, and that learning curve is steep. We aren't always on the same page, but we are committed to doing this together. And those diverse personalities and professional backgrounds add that nuanced understanding. So looking forward, obviously we'll continue to network build. We have gaps to address in who is speaking right now and working right now within HSN. But we're also going to do a deeper asset mapping of what our community resources are. We clearly did that at the start of HSN when we spoke with the builders and the citizens around what they see is going on. But we would like to go deeper and also facilitate that asset mapping with groups like congregations that have a lot to give, that have a desire, but maybe are kind of inactive in how much they're really involved. We're always trying to respond to our network's interest, and we have received comments from folks within the network looking to pursue topics such as sanitation, legislative advocacy, and tenants' rights. We're always looking to build up that authentic leadership to support any initiative and make sure that this need is not already being addressed elsewhere in our community, because we're not trying to compete with anyone already doing the good work. We'd like to build with them and add to it. It is clear that we need many solutions to confront our housing situation here and nationally. And when we need some measure of hope and inspiration, we often look to places like Solution Summit for notions on what others are doing. And you'll recognize a few of these logos, I'm sure. We found this collection of networks and organizations to have special interest for us, and specifically for me. I have appreciated the work of each of these, and of course, countless others that are not on this slide. But just briefly, I'll go over what these folks are doing, just as a way for you to step out of this presentation here and go to another that is also doing really profound work. So here we have the advocacy work of the Washington Low-Income Housing Alliance, which did so much in this legislative session for renters, especially during COVID times, and that cannot be stated enough. They've really done a lot of important work at the legislative level. We have Mobile Loaves and Fishes, which runs the tiny shelter or tiny house village in Austin, Texas, called Community First. Highly recommend looking them up and watching their documentary, also called Community First. They're housing over 200 people in tiny shelters there and doing an amazing, amazing job of it in Texas. Lawrence Community Works is a community development corporation in Massachusetts that is not especially housing focused, but is very community and network focused and was a direct inspiration for Housing Solutions Network. The Lopez Island Community Land Trust is a remarkable organization that I don't believe has been featured in Solution Summit before. I haven't seen it, but they have a wealth of materials on their site that I highly encourage you to look at. They've been doing it since the 80s and have built 6 neighborhoods that are based kind of in a sweat equity model, with community members coming in to help build these homes for folks that would never be able to live on Lopez Island, which is just north of Port Townsend. Otherwise, it has a major, major wealth gap there. You have young farmers looking to make it there, and you also have Paul Allen's estate there, which gives you a sense of kind of where the gap is. It's absolutely enormous. But they are doing a lot to inspire long-term housing and economic vitality through that housing. And finally, Rock USA. I just watched a great video from them at Solution Summit, talking about their resident-owned communities and how they're doing that work nationally. And just really inspiring to see. Not only are folks trying to build better housing that is more affordable, but we're trying to retain what we already have, especially in mobile home communities that are regularly being closed down. So Rock USA doing enormously important work out there. We're grateful to this network, this greater network of people that we can turn to and feel inspired by, and so grateful for the work that Bill Barberg and the whole team at the Solutions Summit is doing to put this together. And we feel honored to be invited to this. And I hope this has been helpful and somewhat inspiring for you, for your network, your organization on this path to creating housing solutions for all of us. Thank you for your time. And please do not hesitate to reach out to Justine or myself at Housing Solutions Network. Thank you very much.